Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva. I started one of the first generative AI companies back in 2016, pre-transformer model. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. Today at GSD, we have 180 companies inside of our portfolio, representing 73 countries around the world. With that, today on Top Global Startups, I have incredible executives. I'm thrilled to have Enrique Perezalonso joining us today, the CEO and co-founder of Palla Financial, a fast-growing fintech company that's transforming the way cross-border payments are made across the Americas. Enrique is a seasoned executive, more than 20 years experience leading financial, technological, and operational strategy in both the U.S. and Latin America. He's an MIT Sloan graduate, a Y Combinator alum, and a proven leader who has managed high-performing teams of 150 plus while driving innovation and business growth across multiple industries. At Palla, Enrique and his team are on a mission to make international payments faster, more transparent, and more affordable, helping businesses and individuals send money seamlessly across borders. Their approach to compliance and security has set them apart, especially as new regulations or remittance taxes come into play. Enrique, it's an honor to have you here today. And with that, I'd like to bring him on board. Hi, Enrique.
Hey, Gary, thank you very much for having me. And you almost made me blush with that intro.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, you've done a great job, and it's an honor to have you here. You know, Enrique, you've had over 20 years worth of experience leading financial and operational strategy across the U.S. and Latin America. What inspired you to co-found Palla?
So that's a great question, and it can go very long or very short. So let me give you the short of it. The reality is that we saw that the way to send money, especially for consumers, we have a big Latino population in the U.S. that still have family members in the whole Latin America, and they were struggling to send money. That you had to either download apps, go deposit cash, but we also saw the other side of the coin, which is the people who are receiving money, and they had a horrible experience. You need to go up and pick up cash. You have to mobilize to a store, pick up the cash, which is unsafe, takes time, takes resources. So we said that there's got to be a better way, right? We got to find a better way to do this. And of course, we first started with a big concept, which was how do we make it easier? We went through, blockchain. We went through different iterations, and where we landed is we found that embedding the money transfer experience within financial institutions, either LATAM or in the US, really works. It really makes it easier for everyone. So that's what we're doing now in Palla. We work with different partners in Latin America, especially, to embed our solution and give their customers a way to request and receive funds instantly from the US.
So, you were at MIT Sloan, and you've had these executive roles across Latin America. What are some of the personal or professional experiences that really shaped your vision for solving cross-border payments? And by the way, I do a lot of work in Africa. So we're down in fact, I'm going to be down there with the third largest bank in Africa in a couple of weeks, Zenith. And, we say banking the unbanked, right? Because it's a big problem. In fact, maybe that's one of the biggest markets for you. There's 1.3 billion people in 54 countries there.
I'm sure it is, and it's in our roadmap. It's in our roadmap.
Yeah, I'll be down there with Jim Ovid's group. So the wealthiest guy in Africa's brother is my neighbor here in Wellington, actually, and Sayud and Data. So most people don't realize how fast that economy is growing.
No, I know, and and there's interesting diasporas living here in the U.S. and in Europe that are sending biggest amount of money.
Huge money, yeah.
People depend on that. People, the same way we depend on payroll, to get every 2 weeks we get our payroll. A lot of people depend on that money to make ends meet in these places. So it should not be underestimated.
No, I agree. I lived in I actually pre-2015 I lived in Russia. So I spent time in Russia, and I remember because my my wife would send money over to her mother. and a father, and those kind of things. It's just accepted part of the culture. Most Americans don't understand it, right? Like what an extended nuclear family is like.
Exactly, and a lot of people who come here, and without getting into the details whether they're here like they do it the right way or the wrong way, but a lot of people come here because they want to give their families a better life. They want to improve the quality of life back home, and in Mexico and Latin America in general, which is the market that I know really well, people really depend on it to it's not that sometimes they're using it to buy to build wealth. And sometimes they're using that money just to get by, to buy groceries, pay medical bills.
All right, great. I remember I had to send $800 one time over because one of my wife's aunts, actually, she had a problem, and she was going to die if she didn't get this medicine. And the only place you could get the medicine, you could get it in some parts of Europe, in the U.S. So actually, it cost me $800 to get this medicine to send over, and it saved her life.
Yeah, it is that is the fact of life. And some people, especially in developed countries, they don't have the vision, right? So and they also don't have the vision of how bad of an experience it is for the recipients, especially to kind of have access to his phones and receive it, because everybody is thinking about how do I make it easier for the sender. This industry, especially.
Yeah, no, I agree. They don't think about the receiver.
Exactly, and that's what we've done different. You asked me before about my experience in financial institutions and leadership in Mexico and Latin America, and one thing I've noticed is that people want a better experience. A lot of the banking institutions, especially in Latam, they and here in the US, to be fair, like they treat you like a number, and people just want to feel like they can get what they want, get shit done, GSC.
Yeah.
Without major roadblocks or complications or jumping through hurdles, and to make it, to do it fast, do it securely, and that's ultimately that's a big lesson I learned. It's not just in the US; it's all over the world. People want easy, right? And that's what we're trying to provide.
No, I love it. And so, so tell me a little bit about it. So you were at Sloan. How does it, so I've had MIT MBAs and PhDs from MIT inside of GSD and sort of Scalar. But how did you go from that world, right, the Sloan world, back to reality?
So, the typical path out of Sloan, is hey, you go to consulting or investment banking, and back then this was 2001. I'm sorry, I wish it was 2021, but 2001. There was like a very small entrepreneurship track back then. It was the .com boom, and so I just went there, like went to consulting, then moved on to the corporate world. And the reason I did it is, hey, that's where I saw myself moving for the rest of my life, the corporate world, that type of environment. But at some point, I really figured, hey, I've got to take control of my life. I've got to take control of my professional destiny, so to speak. And one thing I probably never saw before is me starting a company. At least not when I was in MIT, and not. Back then I was just not interested. And you had the option, of course. They had the entrepreneurship lab, and you have Ken Morse and a lot of people who were very knowledgeable about that, but I wasn't interested. And in a way it turned out better, because I feel like I'm starting in a point where I have a lot more experience. I have a lot more I feel better prepared to do what I'm doing now. But I guess everyone's journey is different too. But that was a journey for me, and I think MIT really gave me a really good base for that period of my life. But your priorities change, and your outlook changes, and that's kind of where I find myself. I decided I didn't want to work for this huge corporation anymore. I wanted to take control of my own destiny.
So one of the things, by the way, I'm using my multi-agent large language models. So it's actually continuously sensing, listening, and coming up with questions and things, and it's curious. So what it said to me, or what it's saying is, many fintechs are tackling cross-border payments. What makes Palla different from players like Wise, Remitly, or Western Union?
Well, you have several types of players in the cross-border space. You have the consumer-facing ones, which is like Wise, Remitly, the ones you just mentioned, and they're all about getting the customer, the sender, right? So they're about getting the customer to go to their experience in the US, and then they have multiple ways of delivering the funds into LATAM. What we've done is we've created a network of, right now it's more than 30 different financial institutions across LATAM, and it's growing every day, where anyone can request funds from anyone else in the US. And it's all white label, it's all embedded within their financial institution. And on the US side, it's like there's no apps to download. It's just a web app, it's like a checkout experience. And you just register very quickly for the first time. And after that, it's a three tap process. And you can send the money in seconds. It's like you don't have to wait hours or days for the recipient to get them. And the recipient will get the money.
I mean, that's a real pain in the butt. I know when we get wire transfers or ACH and things, sometimes ACH is faster, but it's a real pain, and even PayPal with the charges that they charge.
Exactly. You're always wondering, hey, will my money get there? And will they have any trouble receiving it? And because it's not there until you have it in your hands. And with Palla, you have the money in your account in a couple seconds. So it's our initial thesis was, hey, like, will it work if we sell this product to the recipient, right? And we take them control, we give them a way to take control of the experience and the transaction. And I mean, that was a risk. That was a huge risk we took. And it's worked out very well. Like I said, we're growing very fast. And that was the initial thesis that proved to be right, because people want a better way on the recipient side too. So that's a big difference between us and the other companies. We consider ourselves more of a platform, white label, but we're a very, very big focus on the recipient side.
It just said to me, tell Enrique I noticed his post about the new 1% U.S. remittance tax coming in 2026. Why is Palla unaffected, and how does that reinforce your compliance first approach? I don't know where it came with this. Is that true?
Yeah, I posted this on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. As you know, the new big beautiful bill has a 1% tax on cash-based remittances. Right now, just to give you some context and your audience a little bit of context, around half of the remittances that are originating in the US are still originating in cash. We know, because there's statistics about it, that 88% of the people who send money to LATAM through remittances, they have bank accounts. But still, so you have this gap, 50% are still using cash, but 88% have bank accounts. So there's this disconnect. That means either it's a behavioral issue or a trust issue. So those people are going to be affected. And what we think is that a lot of people, 1%, might not sound like a lot, but it is a lot because it's added to the fees that the remittance companies charge. So it starts to become very expensive. So what we think is going to happen, and that's why Palla is really well positioned, is because we're 100% digital. So we only take money from traditional electronic banking methods in the US. So what's going to happen, we believe, is a lot of people are going to move to electronic payment methods, and so in a way, it's giving people the incentives to move to solutions like Palla, and that's kind of our bottom line. And of course, we still think there's going to be cash. Cash is never going to go away. But I think the incentives are going to be so that people start moving away from it, though. And I think that's a positive thing, too.
How important is using formal U.S. bank channels and cards to ensure transparency, regulatory compliance, and trust for their users?
Well, that's a great question. A little bit in the weeds in the compliance side, but no problem. The big issue with cross-border payments is you don't want people to use them for nefarious purposes, right? You don't want people to use them for money laundering or financing crime, right? You don't want people to use your platform for that. So one way to help prevent it is, if you're going from a bank account to a bank account and both entities are regulated, then it just adds more layers of control. So, for example, if I was in Mexico, you were sending me money, the money would come from your bank account. Your bank account is keeping an eye on you. They run KYC and multiple controls on you. Then Palla is also going to run some controls on you to make sure that you are who you say you are, and we're going to look at your transaction history. And the recipient bank on my end has always also KYC'd me as a recipient and will also run controls, right? Because we only work with regulated institutions. So that's much safer than cash, where, hey, it's you go to a teller and say, hey, here's $100 or $500, please send it to Enrique in Mexico, and Enrique's going to pick it up at cash in Mexico. So the controls are not the same. It's a much riskier transaction if you're dealing with cash, because you don't know where that money is coming from. It's much more difficult to know the source of funds. So that's why we think this is much safer when you're dealing with cross-border payments.
So, we talked about a little bit, you're deeply focused on Latin America, but there's areas like Africa, right? Which is the largest population under 30 in the world. How are you going to make that leap forward? Because if you look at it, I mean, I hear banking the unbanked. In fact, I told you I'll be in Lagos, Nigeria in a few weeks with the third largest bank in Africa. And, there's a lot of interest there, but how do you make that leap over to that continent? Is that something you want to do?
It is. And for us, we're set up in the US to originate the transactions from the US. So what we're looking for right now is for those diasporas or those money flows that go from the US to other countries. And of course, naturally for us, Latin America was the biggest opportunity. I'm Mexican I was born there. So it was much easier for cultural and language and several reasons to start there, but it's also the largest corridor from originating in the U.S. It's over $160 billion every year, and it's growing at double digits every year from the U.S. to Latin American markets, and then our kind of strategic horizon has other markets which are also very interesting. Some of them, like Nigeria, like Kenya, are very interesting. And there's some other
Nigeria. Most people don't realize there's like 270 million people. These are not small. It's approaching the size of the United States, and it's growing way faster.
And for us, the important thing is, hey, how many Nigerians or family of Nigerians or friends of Nigerians are sending money from the US there? And that volume is also growing. And so you have diasporas as well from Vietnam, you have diaspora from the Philippines, you have diasporas from other Southeast Asian countries.
Filipinos do it a lot, right? They're sending money back and forth all the time.
100%. So that's where we want to keep on growing. We want to continue to make it easier for people to again, request funds or send funds, and just make people's lives a little bit more convenient. Just anything helps, because everyone's time is valuable and everyone's money should be safe and they should all feel good about how they're sending money back home.
How'd you do? Have you how many rounds have you raised for the company?
So we've done we raised a little bit of money before our seed round, and we were in Y Combinator, which was great. Really helped us kind of prepare for the growth of the company. We did a seed round after that. We had a follow-up kind of post-seed top-up, if you will, and we just completed our Series A very recently.
How big was your Series A?
So the whole financing was 14.5 million, and you could say it's not as big as other comparable companies, like for example that are doing remittances. But keep in mind, we're not a consumer-facing company, so all the money we raise, it's going to grow our capacity, right? It's grow our products, grow our rails, grow our reach. But we're not spending that in customer acquisition. We do that through our partnerships. So So that's we are very efficient. We're still a small company from a headcount perspective, but we want to keep it that way because we want to continue to be efficient. We want to be we are a platform. We don't want to become a customer facing company and have to spend millions and millions of dollars in customer acquisition.
No, it's interesting. So when I go over to Zenith Bank, I'm going to be talking about AI and things like payments, right? So I'm actually going to be over there with Jim Ovid is the owner of that bank. It's quite interesting. And it's the third largest bank in Africa, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So you've gone down through and you've managed to scale companies of 150 people plus. When you've gone down through, what leadership lessons have you carried over from your early career into leading a fintech startup, and how's that helped you?
Well, I think that nothing prepares you better than just the years of experience, right? It's not the MBA, it's not the, and a lot of what you find in your career, and I'm sure it's been the same for you, Gary, is that it's dealing with people and being fair, being just, and learning how to manage the personal and professional relationships. That is something that only, in my opinion, only time can teach. But that's key, honestly, to growing an organization, creating partnerships, making business. That for me is one of the biggest, most important things. So, and I'd say that the other, there's several other lessons, of course. Growing a company is, you have to be very, have an ability to keep an eye on multiple things at the same time, but just have the basic set of KPIs that you're all in that the whole organization is pushing for. Because as you get bigger and as you have, I've worked for organizations that are very large, it's very easy to get lost into competing priorities and competing metrics, and that's where the organizations can get into trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then when you start to have meetings, that's
exactly.
When it starts to get really bad. And then you see, I'll never forget this true story, Enrique. So for 5 years, I worked for Digital HP, and I got 5 promotions. It was great. But I remember sitting in a meeting, and the meeting was so boring because it was a meeting about meetings, and I happened to have a legal pad there. And I always like to take notes, or I would scribble and whatever. And I was a psychologist at one point, so I would write, and people couldn't really read it, because I wrote really fast. And I was writing nonsense down. I'll never forget this. I was writing nonsense down, and they came up to me afterwards and they said, it's amazing to you pay so much attention to these meetings. And I'm thinking, I can't even believe it, right? So I had gotten 5 promotions in that situation. I did real well. But it was amazing. I was so bored. I was bored out of my mind in the meeting.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a lot of this. Sometimes when you start hiring people and growing so fast, a lot of it becomes about just having a bigger power base for a lot of the individuals.
Yeah, and you hire anybody you can just so you have more people there. So it's harder to get rid of you, right? Because you got so many people that are loyal to you. Right? It's crazy.
Exactly. And for me right now, one key thing that I learned that I apply it every day is, hey, let's just do one thing, but do it really well. Mm-hmm. So we have competitors that come up with or copycats that are, they copy our product. And the reason they don't do it well is because they also do like many other things. They issue cards, they do processing, they do a ton of other different things. And we just stick to what we know and what we do well, and we do that really well. That's I think key, and especially as a startup. Of course, when you're dealing with multi-million, multinational corporations, yeah, you're past that, right? But if you're starting a company, it's very easy to fall into the temptation of, oh, look, there's this opportunity here, there's this shiny object over here. I mean, and it's okay to pivot, but just do that one thing. Just do that thing.
Don't get distracted. You get distracted, sometimes you go out of business, right?
Right. You hear the sound of the sirens, somewhere else, and I think it's very easy, and it's very easy because sometimes you see the market going in a certain way. For example, right now, of course, the big kind of the big trends I see now are, of course, AI and blockchain, stablecoin, but they have to make sense for your business, right? You can't just just try to bootstrap it into your business and try to make it sense. You have to, they have to add value to what you're doing. And
yeah, I agree. And so how do you go down through? So one of the things it wants me to ask you this. How do you think emerging regulations, digital currencies or CBDCs, digital currencies might shape the remittance industry? How's that going to impact your business?
Well, that's a great question. And I think especially as it relates to blockchain and especially with a stable coin, that's something we keep a very close eye on, because what we see right now is the biggest use case for that is to make large transfers of funds. For example, if you want to settle with a kind of a settlement from your settlement account in the US to a settlement account in Mexico, it really makes it very fast, very efficient. But still, when you're dealing with individual personal transactions, it's still it's still not there. And the reason I say it is because people need the cash. People need, well, not the cash, but they need the currency. They need to go out and spend it and pay that doctor or pay the groceries. So when you're dealing with a population which is still in large part unbanked, so we're dealing with the bank part, but it's one step removed to have them have like a wallet for stablecoin or crypto, right? Especially when you're dealing with developing economies. So we don't know where that is going, and that's okay. I think we're definitely want to innovate, and we definitely want to find ways to incorporate it into our offering, and we will, right? But you got to give people what, the consumer, what they need, and what they need is the money, the cash, right? So we do have some ways to settle with it, with ourselves, with our partners, to do the cash distributions. So, but that's mostly for wholesale. That's where we see like a very big opportunity and a huge kind of shift going on. Because in the past, hey, you got to send a wire, and the wires, you got to send letters. It takes time, and it's all these SWIFT intermediate, different bank that you got to go through. Whereas with blockchain, it's much easier, much faster process, right? But for the consumer side, that's where we're keeping an eye on it, and we definitely think there's a lot of potential. We just want to be careful about not assuming that we can tell the consumer, hey, here's this thing, and now you're going to be using this, and we want to give them what they want and what they need today.
Listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. Closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you? And Enrique, if you want to stay on for a few minutes afterwards, we can talk.
Absolutely. So, really appreciate, Gary. Thank you for the invitation. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, my email is enrique@palla, that's PALLA.com. We work with different companies and different banks to enable their fund transfers. So very happy to chat with anyone, and really appreciate the time, Gary.
Thank you. And thanks to all my audience for joining one more time. GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And we'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Enrique, and thanks, everybody, one more time.